dun, dun.
All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I am your host, Damon Pistolka, and I am incredibly excited. I'm also a bit nervous because our guest today, Dr. Dorothy Martin-Neville. Geez, I just about missed my notes here. Didn't see that right? We're going to be talking about putting the work in to live your best life.
Yeah.
Dr. Dorothy, thanks for being here today.
You are so welcome.
This is awesome. I'm so excited to have you here. We talked a while back and I was like, you have to come on the show. And then I'm just going to tell people out there, if you're listening, and you're doing this, listen, go to her website, watch the videos, go look at other videos and listen to her talk, and you will understand why I'm quite freaking out a bit here. So, Dr. Dorothy, is it all right if I call you Dr. Dorothy like that?
Sure, you can call me Dorothy's fine.
Okay, Dorothy.
Yeah.
Okay, Dorothy. We always like to start the show out just kind of getting a little bit of someone's history and how you got here today. And I realize this is a journey for you. So let's start there and we'll work our way through that so people can really understand you, and then we'll talk about how you're helping people put in the work and find their best lives.
You've got it. And since I'm over 20, that could be a really long story. So I'll make it really short for you. I started off as a child. I started off in an orphanage, and I was raised in an orphanage until I was about 3. And then I was adopted by an Irish alcoholic cop and raised in the housing projects in South Boston. So I'm a Southie girl for anybody who knows that town. And which is a really fun, outrageous Irish Catholic little ghetto. You know, at least it was in my day. It's changed now. It's a yuppie little place now. But in any event, I was raised there. And I always wanted to do something, have an impact, to do something. And so when I was in high school, you're a success story if you make it to high school graduation. You're an educated woman. And because not many did. But I made it to high school and wanted to go to college, and my dad didn't believe in educating girls. So I was going to apply to nursing schools. I actually went for an interview at a nursing school because my grades were great. Academics is easy for me. And found out I could not go to nursing school anywhere in the country because I went to an unaccredited inner city high school. And so nursing school was out, college was out. My mom said, become a waitress, marry Michael, become a waitress, and until you get pregnant, and then just stay home and raise all the babies. And we wanted 20 children. We had them all named because somehow we knew when the boys were coming, the girls were coming, because we were 17 and knew everything. And so we had Maureen and Shane and Sharp and all the names, Eileen, everybody named. And that would have been okay, but I also wanted something else. And the something else won out. And since I couldn't get out through college, I couldn't get out through nursing school, my only way out was by becoming a Catholic nun. And I wanted to do service anyway. I wanted to make it, there wasn't a sacrifice. I wanted to do service. I wanted to make a difference in other people's lives. And so I became a Catholic nun, which wasn't easy either because the Catholic Church doesn't allow illegitimate children in the convent. And so I had to find another route. I found somebody who applied to 1,000 communities around the globe. We found a community in Quebec that was under a bishop, not the Pope. And he worked with prostitutes, and they had a creche, which was a home for babies of the prostitutes. We had over 2,000 babies. And so he said, we'll take a risk on an illegitimate child since, you know, she may fit in with this population. So I did. And once I went there and had a long black habit on, they decided, Mother Superior said she was sending me to college. And I said, Mother, they won't let me in. And she said, you will, sister. So with a long black habit, I went to college. And once you have a BA, nobody cares where you went to high school.
Yeah.
And so I did that. Eventually realized that there was too much life in me, that I love change. I'm a real change maker, and I'm a very innovative change maker. And within religious life, innovation, change making is not a respected quality. So with great deal of love and support, I left. I mean, I was loved. I felt very loved, but it was clear that I didn't belong there anymore. So I left, went back home, didn't fit in. Many friends were either dead or still living in the projects and on welfare, and I didn't fit. So I decided to become an international airline stewardess because so much had happened in the world all the years I was inside. I thought, I want to go see the world. I've never seen it. And the best way to see the world was to become an airline stewardess. So I went to Kansas City, trained as a TWA airline stewardess, and was assigned to New York City. And I traveled over 1 million miles seeing the world and had a great time doing it. Yeah, it was really wonderful. It was time. I had been in cloister or semi-cloister for years. So it was time to see the world and go out and explore it and have a ball. And I did. I did.
Well, and that was the time when air travel was still a treat, kind of in a lot of ways.
Yeah, we were the sex symbols of the skies. You know, you'd be on an airplane and somebody would say, could you go to a party tonight at the British Embassy? If I was flying to London and I didn't bring clothes for the British Embassy. Well, I'll take you out buying. Well, they buy you a dress, they buy you shoes, they get you jewelry, and now you go to the British Embassy. They're thrilled. They have a stewardess on their arm, and you're thrilled like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm in the British Embassy. So it's a very different time then.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. It was. So about how old were you at that time?
I was in my 20s.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I couldn't even imagine. That had to be a lot of fun because, just to be able to do that and experience life that way at that point.
It was, after years of religious life, all that talk about cultural shock. Cultural shock went from the housing projects and hanging with the Saints and the Aces and the Mustangs to all of a sudden being a nun with a long black habit on, which was a cultural shock. And then going from that to Manhattan to become an international airline stewardess and going to, what are you doing this month? Oh, I can't go to your party. I'm going to be in Paris. I can't go to your party. I'm going to be in Madrid. I can't go to this. I'm going to be over here. So yeah, it was a different lifestyle. And, you live in a country, sleep for a few hours, and then a small group of us maybe buy a baguette, a couple bottles of wine, some ham and cheese, and just get on a boat and take a boat ride up the Seine or up the Rhine or wherever we were. And it was a very different lifestyle, to say the least. And it was wonderful. I mean, I've been blessed, some amazing, wonderful experiences in my journey so far. And who knows what the future holds, but this has been some really great adventures, And so then eventually I got married, and I was married for 15 years. I moved to Connecticut and I got married for 15 years. I was here. And then I got divorced and with a kindergarten and fourth grader, and knew I needed to support my babies. So I went back and got my master's and in therapy. And because I still wanted to make a difference. I wanted to support people becoming who they were, living in the projects and seeing all these women on the front stoop which is in the projects is either drugs or alcohol. So seeing all these women who were physically abused overnight with new bruises, with new whatevers, I wanted to support folks. I wanted to support the men I felt sorry for and yet hatred for, and the women I felt sorry for and never wanted to become. So there was all of these mixed emotions that go. But the bottom line was I wanted to support the men and the women coming into who they were meant to be, not who they were victimized in the mind's eye into becoming, And so becoming a therapist to me was living out what I'd always wanted to do. And I truly believe that every one of us is born with a spiritual purpose. And that when we recognize our purpose and we follow that, as we go through life, we express it differently. But if you look back over your lifetime, what you've done has always built on what you've done previously. There were skills you learned in the first journey that you took into the next, that you learned there, you took that pile into the third, and it keeps going, And from therapy, I was blessed. I was terrified, and I knew nobody knew who I was. So I wrote a talk on 2 pieces of paper, and I'd follow it line by line, frightened to speak to church groups, synagogues, book clubs, women's group, anybody that would let me speak, I spoke to, so they would know I was opening up a practice. Within 3 months, I had a 6-month waiting list that lasted almost 20 years. And It worked. When you're passionate and you love what you're doing, people are drawn to your passion. It's almost like what
Yes.
you do is irrelevant. They want that. They want that. I didn't know that then, but I figured it out later. And about 3 years in, I started noticing that certain personality styles were coming in with prostate cancer or breast cancer or autoimmune disorders. And when I would speak to friends who were specialists in the medical and MD community, they'd say, it's all coincidental. I knew it was not all coincidence. If I could predict it, we've left the realm of coincidence. There's some predictability here. And so I went and spent about 8 or 9 years training, becoming certified in 9 modalities of integrative healthcare. So I studied energy medicine, I studied advanced acupressure, iridology, reflexology, all kinds of different modalities, and combined them all with my experiences and created my own method, my own approach to energy medicine, and brought a massage table into my office. And for about 6 years, I lost malpractice insurance because psychologists can't touch their patients.
Yeah.
And I did.
Yeah.
And I did. I'm not much for rules and regulations.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Why bother? And so people on my waiting list said, teach me what you know. And to make a long story short, I ended up creating a 4-year program in energy medicine. And a good portion of my student body were physicians, nurses, OTs, PT, occupational therapists, and so forth. And a percentage were lay people, non-medical folks who wanted to become healers, who wanted to become energy medicine practitioners, Reiki masters, and folks like that studied with me. And my students, I was blessed, flew in from around the country and Canada and Australia and the Caribbean to study with me. And the 3rd and 4th year students had to do medical internships in their own states or countries, which ended up, I was teaching these classes to start. I ended up 63 on my payroll, and I had full-timers with medical, dental, 401k match, and I had numbers of 1099s and this. And the work in the hospitals was successful, and hospitals wanted to give me grant funding to research some of the work I did. I created something for sundowning, so it was changing the Alzheimer's units in different facilities. So I opened up a nonprofit because they prefer to give research grant funding to nonprofits for tax purposes. So I had my private practicing 42 patients a week. I had my school, then I had my nonprofit. And one day I was just sitting down like a good Irish girl having a glass of wine and thinking, what on earth has happened? You're a kid from an orphanage. You're a kid from the projects. You have all these employees. Growing up, I knew lawyers that you got to get you out on bail. And thankfully, I've never been in jail, so I never did that. But I mean, I knew others that you had lawyers on bail. And now all of a sudden, I have for-profit lawyers. I have nonprofit lawyers, for-profit accountants, nonprofit accountants. And oh my God, there is worlds out here I knew nothing about when I was growing up. And really recognized how absolutely blessed I had been, how focused, but how blessed as well, and love life, love the adventure, because you never know what's coming next. You never know what's possible if you're willing to follow your dreams. And it really is about, what are your dreams? Are you willing to jump in and live them? Or are you willing to sit here and wish you had them? And I've always been somebody that felt, I think your soul calls you to who you're meant to be. So for every dream you follow, you develop new skills, you develop new abilities, you develop a new sense of self, and you develop a different sense of how you fit in the world. So for every dream you follow, you become more and more of who you're meant to be. And life becomes more and more of an adventure. And you realize skills you never knew you had, strengths that you never imagined. Those people had them. And then you realize, oh my God, I've got them. How did that happen? And life just becomes a wild adventure, And so when I took my youngest to Cornell for college, I drove home sobbing because I realized my daughter just graduated from Georgetown, that once your babies go away, you're never mama again. You're ma. And ma, I need money for. Ma, could you, that kind of thing. And I just was sobbing because I loved being a mom. And God willing, I'll always be a mom to the day I pass, but it's different. And so I pulled into this big house I had, and poured a glass of wine, and thought, okay, kiddo, you're in your 40s. You've got these businesses. Your babies are gone. What are you going to do? I could get a smaller house. I could get a condo, get an apartment. I could do whatever I wanted to do because I was completely free with no day-to-day responsibilities other than my businesses. And realized as I sat there, I was theoretically highly successful and I was very unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing what I couldn't imagine ever doing. But when I stopped, I wasn't happy. And I knew enough from my work in medicine to know that if I stay unhappy and simply doing life, simply surviving the journey, and I don't care if you make 100,000 a year, 100 million a year, you're surviving the journey if you get up and do what you're supposed to do and just go on. You're not living your life, you're surviving it. And so before I finished that glass of wine, I called American Airlines and said, get me a one-way ticket to Anguilla in the British West Indies. I called an agent, said, put my house in the market. I called a couple of girlfriends, said, I'm moving. Before I have a massive sale, is there anything you want? And gave away furniture to girlfriends who needed things and
Yeah.
wanted to change their decorating styles. And then I sold everything and called my office and let them know I'm leaving the country in 3 weeks. I'm moving to the British West Indies in the Caribbean. And there I went. And I was blessed with amazing executive directors, handling my businesses. And every day I called in every day and dealt with them every day. I flew back every 2 months because my school met every 2 months, all day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so every day I was on the phone with them and they would fax me the bills. I always managed the money. I always made sure I was the one that handled that. And then I would come back and teach and speak and have team meetings with all my people. And I was a speaker. I'm past president of the National Speakers Association as well. And so Wayne Dyer and I had the same agent over here in the East Coast, and he's passed now, but he used to be a big speaker in the personal growth community and the health community. And so I would speak here on the East Coast. At the time, that's all I could afford time-wise to do that. And then I'd go home again for 2 months and then come back, and eventually came back to America 10 years later when one of my students was a graduate and UConn got a multi-million-dollar grant and funding medicine grant and asked me to come back and be co-chair, oversee energy medicine research across the country, become a clinical instructor at UConn. And NIH wanted to give me grant funding to research my work. So I did quantitative and qualitative research. And so I came back and I've been here ever since. And when I came back, the culture had changed. A sense of entitlement took over this country in a way that I couldn't fathom. And coming from a country that at the time had one paved road and the whole country was 32 square miles, the whole country had about 6,000 people. And coming back to America, it was such another cultural shock, a cultural change, which has been a story of my life. Cultural changes just keep taking place. But how you adapt is really what the story's about. And I ended up closing the school, the nonprofit, and my practice. I see a few people. And coaching didn't exist when I left, and it did when I came back.
Yeah.
But that's another way in which in my school, for every physician or nurse practitioner or every whomever I taught, over the course of their career, they were going to impact thousands of people with another approach to healthcare. And I thought, how can I have the greatest impact and influence now and combine my knowledge of psychology, my knowledge of healthcare, and at some point founding 5 companies, 4 of which were really bigger, successful companies. How can I combine all of that? And I thought, let me become a coach that works with leaders in the industries. Because if I can impact a leader, I impact all the people that leader impacts. So it's having the greatest amount of influence by working with the most significant person in their world. And that I discovered so easily as I did as a therapist, that when you support somebody to change, you change their entire life.
Yes.
because who they are, it's a different person they take into their relationships, a different person they take to their kids, a different person they take to their business, to their employees, to their vendors. And the impact that that man or woman can have is massive.
Yes.
So here I am. That's a long story, but it's a
But
lot.
it's great. It's great. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, I could listen to you for a lot longer than that, but I also want to get some questions in too, because this is incredible. I tell you, it's so let's just walk back a little bit. You
Mm-hmm.
what got you into the energy and I'm not I just say energy healing? Did I say that
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep. Energy healing.
How did you really I mean, where did you go? There could be something to this. What brought that about that you go, okay, I think that there's more to this than what the doctors are saying.
When I started seeing a pattern that when I know just I'm somebody who notices patterns.
Mm-hmm.
When I noticed a pattern that when it came to prostate cancer, it was usually men. Oh, I'll tell you a quick example of that. Connecticut General, which a company here that merged with INA became Cigna, a large insurance
Mm-hmm.
company here in
Yep.
Connecticut. When it was Connecticut General, they had never laid off a soul. They merged and became Cigna, and they literally were laying off thousands of people in between Philly and here, which is where INA had been. And two men came in to see me when they were laid off. And one man came in and said to me, I've been laid off. I want to talk to somebody about it, because my wife, who's raised they had two boys, the boys are gone. My wife stayed home and raised the kids, and now I'm not going to be working. I need to just decompress, if you will, to somebody. And he said, I wanted to leave that company 10 years ago, but I wanted to put my boys through school. So his boys had graduated from college. He said, now I feel like they set me free. I never would have quit. I would have gone until I retired, but they forced me out and they gave me a gift I never knew I could have. And
Yeah.
as we talked and worked, he said, you know what? I'm going to get a job at Lowe's. I never have to put a suit on. I never have to have a meeting. I don't need a briefcase. And I can go and work with a bunch of people doing what I love to do. Whatever they have me do, I'm going to love it. And Lowe's had just opened up down the road in Bloomfield. And he said, I'm going to go down there. And I worked with him for about another month or two. And he said, you know what? My sex life is better. My relaxation is better. I'm off all medications. My life is a gift. And same man at the same time came in to see me and said, those SOBs, I gave them 26 years of my GD life and they let me go. You can't trust anybody. And he went home, started drinking out during the day, hanging out, watching TV, was so enraged at what they had done to him. And then eventually his wife had to go back and get a job. He couldn't get a job. He was convinced he couldn't get a job. Nobody would hire him. Nobody hires old
Mm-hmm.
people. Even though this other man got a job almost immediately at Lowe's. This
Yeah.
one knew nobody would ever hire him. So he just stayed home and didn't try. And his wife had to go out and get a job. Partly she wanted out of the house now
Yeah.
that he was there and angry. But she had to also support the family, which was emasculating. Emasculating because he lost his job. They took his manhood away. His manhood was threatened again when his wife had to go out and start supporting them, right? And this man developed prostate cancer and was filled with rage. And when I started noticing other men that were coming in with medical issues, they weren't coming in because of the medical issues, but it was what came up when they
Mm-hmm.
presented. I started noticing a pattern. And then I started noticing a pattern for women who were coming in with breast cancer. I noticed a pattern for people coming in with autoimmune disorders. And I thought, there's really something here. And somebody came in with chronic fatigue syndrome. And of course, it was brand new. Nobody knew a great deal about it, but they were just stuck on meds because meds fix everything. All right. And I said, tell me what happened to point of onset? What happened when this started developing? And her parents were immigrants from Italy. And if a good girl was going to get a job, she was going to be a school teacher because that's what good girls do if they go to college. And she didn't want to be a school teacher, but she became a school teacher because that's what she was supposed to do if she was going to go to college. and she hated it. In the first year she was in, she started becoming ill. By Christmas, she was so ill she could barely get out of bed. And she had to leave, and she moved in and eventually ended up in a wheelchair when she went outside. She had a cane in the house, but a wheelchair when she went outside. And she had been engaged to be married, broke up with her boyfriend because the doctor had told her with chronic fatigue, if she has children, she could die. So she broke up with him because he wanted kids. And he brought her in to see me the first session. I said, "Who is that gorgeous hunk of man who brought you in to see me?" And she started laughing and said, "That's my ex-fiance." And I said, "Why an ex if he's bringing you in?" And she told me the story. Well, make a long story short, I worked with her, and I said, "If you could do anything in the world, what would it be?" She said, "I love kids, but I would want to work outside and teach sports and really be with them outside." And I said, "Do you have a boys and girls club near you?" Because I don't know if they have them where you are, but we certainly have them up here in the.
Yes, we do.
And
Yes,
I
we do.
said, "Is it one there?" She goes, "You're 2 blocks away." I said, "Could you get a job at the Boys and Girls Club volunteering? Just volunteer 1 or 2 afternoons a week." She goes, "I don't know if I could do it." I said, "Try it. It's what you want to do. Try it and see if they'll let you volunteer." She volunteered 2 half days, ended up doing 2 full days, ended up not needing the wheelchair anymore, ended up not needing a cane anymore. I said, "What if you asked them for a full-time job?" She goes, "I don't know if I can do it." I said, "Try it." By then, her parents were so excited that their baby who was dying is working full-time, teaching sports to these kids after school and teaching sports to some of the younger ones during the day, right? Like a daycare program, if you will. They were so thrilled. She ended up marrying this man. I worked with her into her second pregnancy. And her life changed. Okay, chronic fatigue, she's never going to get over. It's going to be a problem that will kill her, and she can't have children. So that said to me, you have got to explore this reality that folks are not looking at, that we have not trained our medical people to see. And we don't see what we don't expect to see. When you become somebody that opens up to seeing anything and everything, because life is such an exciting adventure, it's amazing what you notice, what you see in the people you talk to, what you see in experiences. And from that, I was almost excited every time somebody walked in with a medical issue, because it's like, oh my God, where does this fit? How does this go?
Yeah.
So I was still doing therapy, but really expanded it to look at their medical history so I could understand what was going on with them. And I bring that into my work now. What is your medical history? Because I want to know how you have or have not been dealing with your life story.
Wow. That is something. And it's something I am no expert in any of this, but I can tell you that when people are happy doing work that really fulfills them and they're meant to be doing, at least at the moment, because that kind of changes through life, like you mentioned, the
It
person,
does, yeah.
and they're just different. The medical, the psychological, it's just so much different that it does affect. And that same person cannot be feeling well and go to the doctor and never get better, but a change, like you're saying, can make all the difference in the world.
All the difference in the world. And you notice how many people, and think about this, how many people have smoked for 50 years and their lungs are fine? Somebody else smokes for 5 years and they have lung cancer. What's the variable? What's the difference there? So there's so many things to look at when it comes to illness, not just you have this and this is the med you take with this disease. What else is going on that I can work with to support your healing process in this? And is it in your personal life? Is it in your business life? Because I'm sure at this point that if something's impacting the business, it's impacting your personal life. If something's going on in your personal life, when you see a company having great difficulty, my first question is what's happening in the leaders' personal lives? What's going on? You can say, no, that has nothing to do with it. This is because our product isn't selling. It's because this. If you were really loving what you're doing and a particular product wasn't selling or something wasn't working, you would sit back, and if you're not creative enough, like I love creative problem solving. If that's not who you are, you would have people on staff that you could brainstorm with. And some of those would be creative problem solvers. You would have dealt with this. But if it's not
Mhm.
being dealt with, what's going on in the leader or the whole C-suite? What is happening that a dynamic isn't taking place that needs to deal with what's here? Check it out. Somebody's going through a divorce. Somebody's affair is coming out. Somebody has a financial issue that's showing up. Something is going on. And without an ounce of judgment, notice it. How do we deal with it to help you get back to where
Yeah.
you need to be? I mean, and to me, throw out the judgment. Ace. We're all human. We all make
Yeah. Oh,
mistakes. We all welcome to life, right?
yeah.
How do we deal with it to help you get back on track to claim your passion, claim your purpose, and in that way, you claim your power and you deal with what's up and you resolve the issues.
Yeah. That's incredible. And first of all, I'll say, hey, thanks, Josh. This is someone that knows just how crazy I am. And he said it's sounds like clinical health psychology, and it's a great approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking. You had I asked before you get on who who are your favorite clients to work in, and you said this, and it's so. I mean, it just hits so many people head on, and I don't care, male, female, doesn't matter. But they're a visionary that recognize the price they've paid, and the people that hear this now, they know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about here. The people that I don't care if you're Elon Musk, you could be this way,
Yeah.
or Bezos. You just make the richest people in the world can be this way when they realize that they are successful, but they've paid such a price.
Right.
What do you see in these kinds of people when they come to see you and the changes in their lives as you're working with them?
The changes in there, it's so exciting. That's why I do what I do, because I love
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
I love what
exactly.
happens. I really love what happens. What I see is it's funny because sometimes they come in and we start talking and they want to say, you don't know what you're talking about. And I just say, okay, and I'll just keep talking anyway. And they eventually say, all right, maybe you got a few points right, and then we just laugh and it becomes, okay, let's deal with this. But what ends up happening eventually, and the timeline depends on their personality, but what ends up happening is that because there's not an ounce of judgment here, it's like, welcome to humanity. They end up seeing, yeah, I'm surviving. I am not enjoying it. I've never thought of myself that way because you know what I got. You know the size of my boat. You know the size of my house. Great. I'm glad for you. If that's what you like, good. Because you bought a boat and you hate boating, but you bought a boat because you're supposed to. Let's talk about that. Get rid of the
Yeah,
damn boat. Let's move on to things you really love. Pair of skis. I don't care what it is. Something you love, right? But it's what happens is they begin to have permission. They can't give it to themselves. They begin to have permission to reassess where they are. They begin to have permission without judging themselves to look back on their life. Why did they start the business they started in the first place? What was their vision for what they were going to achieve there? And if they work in corporate, what was their vision when they took that particular job, right? So, what was their vision back then? How in alignment are they now? And we know they're not. Where did that alignment get lost? And for me, it's always about let's get rid of the self judgment. Let's get rid of the self condemnation. Let's take a look at what happened because you're human. And let's come on up, create some freedom here. How do you want to look at who you're going to be in 5 years or 10 years down the road? Who do you want to be for starters? And then what do you want to be doing? And it may be doing exactly what they're doing now, but in a very different way. And it may be doing something completely different. I have no agenda. My agenda is you. It's not what you're doing, right? So, how can I give you the permission you need to reassess how you do your relationships? Because if you're a dictator in the office, get what you are when you get home, right? And if you are real, and I developed a leadership self-assessment tool to let leaders look at this style of leadership. Because my experience is unfortunately many men and women have been taught this is what a leader looks like. And that's garbage. That's what that leader looks like. Your leadership could be dramatically different. We have thought leaders who are absolutely creative innovators. They're amazing. They may not know how to implement a thing. Then you know who you need to hire. But this is who they are, and they love. They're filled with excitement, passion, and creativity. Good for
Mm-hmm.
you. Or you have the team leader that really likes to create a solid team, create a culture, and get everybody happy and everything's working. And then they're thrown when people are moaning and groaning and complaining about things, right? And then you have the supportive leader who never wants to be CEO, but they want to have the back of the CEO. They just, for whatever reason, and it's not inadequacy, it's not any of that. They just have no need to be out there. They don't want the burden of being on stage. They just want to be the person that makes that person shine. They can have 100 people behind them that they're working with, direct reports or secondary, third reports. They just don't want to be that person. Then you have that visionary leader who says, guess who's in town? And loves the spotlight, loves being that charismatic, that person who can sell your industry to anybody, who can
Mm-hmm.
bring in clients like crazy, who can really make it happen. They may not have an innovative thought in their brain, but they can take your ideas and implement them beautifully, right? And then you have a leader who they are perfectly happy sitting in a room with no windows. For everything that's going out there, they're creating procedures, they're creating protocols, they're creating things that make it work. They're the architect, if you will. They're doing the systems, and they're loving that. Know your style. All of these are leaders. Know your style. And then the people you bring in as your employees or as your co founders, they supplement. So you each bring in different strengths. And when I see so many folks say, no, I've got to be on top of it. I've got to know. I've got to. Okay. I now know you have scotch in the evening. I now know you're not all that happy, because you don't gotta. You do things because you love it, because it feels great, because it feels so easy, so successful. You know what's going on and you're loving it. So I bring them back to that. And so your question of what happens, they get the freedom and the permission to figure out who they want to be, how they really want to run their business, not how they've been running it,
Mm-hmm.
and who they need or want to bring in to supplement the things they no longer want to do because it doesn't fit who they are in the first place, which is what made them so unhappy and moving into survival rather than living out their dream through their business and through their personal life. Does that make
That's
sense to you?
Oh, yes. Oh,
Mhm.
oh, incredible,
Yeah.
incredible sense, because I can tell you from personally being one of those people and changing my life that you can have everything on the outside, nothing on the inside.
No.
And I mean, and it's not just at work; it's at home too. I mean, you can be successful at work, you can be successful at home, but you're not happy.
No.
And you talk about the things like, well, before we were on, high blood pressure, cholesterol, that's these things, bec- because you're not really living your true self, your true life. And some of the things I see that in people around me, that these it causes health problems when
Yeah.
you're doing it because that's what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And not that you can just throw everything away and do whatever, but it's really behooves us to think about what we really want to be doing and try to be moving towards that and
If
get
you
there.
love what you're doing, you can continue doing it. You just find another way to do it, a
There you
way
go.
that allows you to be who you are in the process and
Yeah.
throw out the window who you are supposed to be. All right.
Yeah.
Just because you're the head of the company doesn't mean you're supposed to know everything about that company. You're supposed to have phenomenal people around you who excel at different elements within the company. And when you have to be the everything, or they all have to report to you as if they're reporting to daddy, what ends up happening, or mommy, what ends up happening is that they don't really get to bring their best self to the table, which means you and the company lose out.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to look at, if you're truly living and loving what you're doing, isn't everybody who works for you going to be living and loving what they're doing? And won't your company succeed Every company has bumps. Every company has dips. But when you've got a crew that are loving what they're doing, and I don't mean every single moment of every day, nobody does.
Hmm.
Welcome to
Hmm.
humanity, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But, but when you've got people that basically love going in, what ends up happening when something isn't working, they're not uncomfortable saying, hey, we screwed up over here, or hey, the culture's changed, something's changed, the market's changed, we need to make some shifts. Okay, let's do it. It isn't about looking at who messed up. It's what can we do? What do we need to do? Where can we go and improve this and go forward?
Yeah.
And it's a dramatically different way of doing business. And I don't care the size of your business. It's a dramatically different way of doing it. And if we did that, not only do you have healthier employees, you've got more engaged employees. And when you create a culture that whatever your vision is, that you're going to make the best metal rods out there because they create the safest planes. And you've got everybody else that wants to create safety for everybody else out in the world. And now everybody's coming and they're working, and that's where they're focusing on. This is what it's about for them. And they're about making the world a better place and making people safe. Now you've got
Hmm.
everybody with the same vision,
Hmm.
right? And it can have varying flavors, but the same vision. And they're all working with you. And when you have ups and downs, they're right behind you. They're not judging you, they're with you. And it's a
Yeah.
dramatically different energy in your business. And yet you always have the naysayers, welcome to life. But
Yeah.
this is where do they fit if, which I tell people who, whether they're merging a company or just starting out, before you check somebody's qualifications, check if they fit the culture you've decided you're going to have in your company. Because if they don't fit the culture, I don't care how gifted they are going to do damage to your organization.
Hmm.
Check that before you check qualifications. Once you've got that, then look and see if they fill everything you need for that position.
Yeah. That's a big one. That's
Yeah.
a big one. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions. We're running near the end of time, but I've got to ask this. So when you're working with this people, do
Yeah.
they have friends and family go, what's wrong with you?
Well, but no, that's more of what happened. What
Yeah, yeah,
happened to
something
you?
like that. What happened? What this isn't you, right?
What is happened, which is why I get referrals from people I've worked with. What is
Yeah,
happening? What
yeah,
happened? And it's not like I told them to do anything other than
yes.
grow up or take a look at something. On my website it says she holds your heart while she kicks your ass,
Yeah, I saw
because
that.
it
That's
really
awesome.
because it really is. They know there isn't an ounce of judgment, because welcome to humanity. But at the same time, get over yourself. You've been telling yourself this story for the past 12 years and it's not working. It's time to throw that story out the window. Let's move on. What can we do? And yes, the family members and friends will say, God, who is it? Because you are changing dramatically. And yet my experience is they continuously 95% of the time love the person you're becoming, because you were becoming so much happier. You're becoming
Yeah,
so much more real, so much more spontaneous, and so much more alive. And
yeah,
who doesn't like that in the people in their lives, right?
exactly.
Now, it causes, when you're married, it may cause your spouse to say, whoa, this is a dramatically different relationship, And the first question could be, do you have somebody on the side? Because you're doing things so differently here. But when they realize, no, you're just really reevaluating your life, you're reevaluating how you're doing your relationships, how you're doing your job, how you're doing you,
Yeah,
then it becomes an exciting adventure for everybody.
I gotta write that down.
Mm.
Reevaluating how you're doing you.
Yeah.
That's oh, Dorothy, this has just been a pleasure.
Thank
Just a pleasure. I could talk, ask you more questions, and just listen to you a long, long time. But first of all, thank you for helping people the way that you do.
Oh, thank you. I love what I do. It is so much fun. It truly is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're saving lives. You're helping people live happier, and just making the world a better place. That's just good.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's awesome. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you, though, what is the best way to get a hold of you? There's like a website. What's the
Well,
best?
my website is askdrdorothy.com, AskDorothy, or email me, Dorothy at askdrdorothy.com. Either one, just reach out. I'm here. And I truly love what I do. I really, really do.
Uh, it shows, and I just feel blessed we were able to talk today, and
Thank
thank
you.
you so much for being here. I want to also thank the guests today, Josh, Indu, and I can't tell who the LinkedIn user is, but they're enjoying it, and lots of lessons, lots of wisdom and life lessons. She was loving the discussion, so thank you so much. Thanks for being here today. If you did not started late in this, go back to the beginning. Listen from the beginning. Listen to Dr. Dorothy, because oh man, she was dropping so many great things to think about, and just life lessons. But we will be back again next week with another awesome guest. But Dr. Dorothy, thanks again for being here.
You are so welcome. Thanks a whole bunch.
You bet. Just hang out a moment after we're off the air.